Every week, I speak to dozens of leaders that ask me about the relentlessness of this uncertainty, of how to make hybrid work environments more productive, and how to take better care of their employees and have them more engaged. I wish I had a better answer than the one I've been saying since March 2020, but you need to really stop hoping that this will be over soon, and instead activate what's known as the Stockdale paradox. In short, it's accepting that things are really difficult and will likely stay that way for a long time, but that eventually they'll get better. And in the meantime, we as leaders can focus on making things better that are in our control. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Denley with Peak Performance Leadership. Thank you for being here today. Today, we're going to discuss how we can help our organizations, our divisions, and most importantly, our people grow. I've got some help with me here today. Kicking things off is master producer, Chris. Jump on for us and say hi and let us know how things are going to go today.
Rick, thank you so much for having me be a part of this fantastic leadership forum. I'm honored to be able to join you from the Great White South in Atlanta, Georgia. And just for those of you who are joining us right now, if you're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, wherever you're at and you're watching us, you might be on replay. Sorry, we're actually live right now as it stands. And so because Rick it feeds off of the energy of the crowd, we'd love to be able to hear and get some questions from you. So Rick Denley live, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have any questions, just hit us up in the chat. If you've got any comments or anything, if you're feeling anything, just hit us up in the chat. We'll be able to pop your comments, your questions on. And Rick, I'm excited to get into this stuff.
Great, Chris. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody is as well. And in the studio, we'll bring in and out as needed with great ideas are some of the leaders that I mentioned. We've got Mike Chung here. Dr. Steve is with us today. Bob Geniak. We've got John Jeffkins and Sandra Pedro. So some great guests as well to pop in at the end. And looking forward to those questions as they come in. Chris, let's get it started.
All right.
Now, you know what? It's interesting. I want to take you back a little ways here. And imagine me sitting in a desk, a brilliant desk in a corner office, floor to ceiling glass, and looking a little bit troubled, to be honest. Taking you back to the year 2008, a time when we saw a massive downturn in the economy, the biggest recessionary time in decades. I had just left a job with the corporate world where I was running large divisions, multinationals, to take on a general manager role of a smaller company, but more responsibility. And just then change happened. And here's the interesting thing about change. Remember that there's only two types of change. There's the change that occurs when we decide to make it, which I did. And I decided to go in this direction. Then there's the change that occurs very much like the pandemic that's happened for almost 2 years now that we didn't ask for, that we didn't want to be part of, but we don't have a choice. We need to, as leaders, lead regardless of what type of change and challenges come our way. You know, Jim Clemens wrote a book on it, Good to Great, that I know a lot of you have read. And in that, he says, get good people on the same bus, going in the same direction. Well, guess what? You're the bus driver. You as a leader need to take that bus, that organization, that division, those people, and lead them to where they need to go. That's what leadership is going to be all about. So, Chris, let's have a look at these slides here. I want to share some statistics with you that justify some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today. Okay, the disconnect in the workplace, also known as the great disconnection right now, where 65% of workers aren't connected and actually looking for other opportunities. Okay, they're out there in the workplace, perhaps going to change organizations, and that's disheartening. The millennial generation that we need to adapt and embrace is 3 times more likely to be considering change as well. Now, within that, companies need to care, leaders need to care. Why? Because strong cultures can see a 4 times increase in revenue and growth. We're talking culture here. Poor cultures, 48% staff, almost half, are looking for a new job. The turnover rate in organizations with a positive culture is very low, 14%. With poor company culture, it's up around 48%. And that's way too high. And staff members that we've hired, we want to keep. More than 87% of the world's workforce is not engaged. So how do we get our employees to stay, to get them engaged and working in the best capacity possible? That's what this is about today. Now, it's interesting, I know a lot of you know me for my sales processes and putting in repeatable winning processes, which are so important to organizations to grow. Just as important is keeping our staff, gaining the staff members that we need and having them completely engaged throughout. Chris, let's head to the next slide. Good. So today we're going to look at three main factors: connecting people with purpose, focusing on employee experience and engagement, and creating a culture of adaptability and accountability. Two incredibly important aspects going forward in our workforce. Now, the first one, let's look at how we connect people to purpose, right? People and purpose, there's three main factors we look at: linking people with their outside work, hobbies, and relationships and responsibilities to their work. It's not one and the same and different, and there's a large differentiator now. They're all connected and linked together. In fact, connection to work itself is so important, that the work that they're doing, they really love. That it's not just a 9-to-5 job and then they leave it. So they have to have a purpose to it. Now, the purpose of the organization needs to be extremely clearly shared with each of the staff members so that they understand what the overall purpose is, not just their particular role. So you ask, well, what can leaders be doing here? Well, first off, we need to have open dialogue with teams, divisions, but also one-on-one dialogue with individuals to listen and understand what they're feeling and see if they are really on task and understand the purpose of their role and how it contributes to the overall goals of the organization. We need to link what matters to the goals so that everything that they're doing contribute upwards to the overall organizational goals, and they feel that they're contributing, that they're a solid contributing factor. And the third thing we can be doing as leaders is making sure that there's opportunities for purposeful work, that they really feel engaged with the organization as a whole. All right, that connection point is going to be so very important to them going forward. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something here as well. This is very important when we start looking at connecting the people with a particular purpose. Okay, leadership goal. One of the most important things leaders can be doing on a regular basis is attracting, developing, and retaining top talent. And that takes a lot of work to do so, because we want to be sure that people are coming in as high performers and the organization as a whole can seek to be the very best in the industry. You don't want to be second. You want to be the number one in whatever you're doing in your organization, in selling, in service, in products, in engineering, whatever it might be. Now, here's how we can do that. First thing that you can do is create cross-divisional common goals. Don't have the silos in place to the point where the staff members are not working across all divisions. Create common goals between the divisions, forcing people to work together. Now, in doing so, let's set very clear purpose in this. Make it extremely clear to everybody what the goals are, how they can achieve them, and what the reward and recognition will be. Further to that is individual development. High potential staff members are looking for a career path. They don't just want a job. They want to know where this particular role will take them in the organization and what's the next role that they can be striving for. That individual development and career path is imperative. Remember the war rooms we used to have back in the day? We'd put everybody's picture up on the wall and decide where they were going to go within a large organization. That's flipped. Now we have to listen to the individual staff members and better understand where they want to go and how we as a leader can help take them there in their career path. That's the individual development that we need. And finally, the measurement piece. We still need to measure this to see that it's working for the organization and for the individual. Call it KPIs, main measurements, however you want to look at it, those need to be in place for an organization. You see, we want to attract individuals to an organization that have the right attitude and the same values as our organization, which is most important. Then we want to develop them in those areas towards a career path that they want to go on. There's that attachment that they'll have personally to it. And then, of course, we want to retain them. And we have to be sure that they're challenged and rewarded in the ways necessary. That's focusing on the employee experience. Let's go to the next slide, Chris. Now, Dr. Shimi Kang, a Canadian Harvard Business School trained psychologist, mentions that there's one skill set that if we can master it, we'll have a successful and happy life. Do you know what it is? It's adaptability. Adaptability is a one skill set that can help us and our organizations continue to be successful. So we need to see as leaders, how can we cultivate a culture of adaptability and accountability, right? So we need to be able to adapt. The other thing we need to do is continually improve. The Kaizen approach of continuous improvement about ourselves, our divisions, and our organizations. Now that's going to create a change culture within the organization. And that's what we need to have now. We have to be able to say that, you know what, change is consistent. There's only three consistent things in life, unfortunately: death and taxes and change. Things will not be over. And let me assure you, hope is not a strategy. Hoping that the pandemic will go away, hoping that things will get better, none of those things help us get to where we want to be. We have to be change agents, and you as a leader have to lead that type of change. So how do we do it? How do we create that culture of adaptability and accountability? Clear, consistent communication on a regular basis. High degree of engagement. Allow your high potentials and your staff members to be involved in what's going on, the direction of the company. That's really important. Values. What are the values of your organization? Back in the day, we used to hire based on what? Skills, experience, and background. Now, although those are still important, when we're hiring and keeping staff members on, we have to hire based on values. Do your values of the organization line up with the individual? Do yours as a leader. That'll come through. And within that, then, if the values align themselves, we have to hold ourselves and others accountable. Accountable to the results and the daily routines that are happening. Self-accountability for the individual members of our staff needs to shine through. It's one of the most important factors that alignment of values be in place. Listen, if values are aligned within an organization, you don't need a ton of rules and processes in place. The people get it. They have the same mindset as yours and the organization, and they're going to do the right thing. That in itself will make them self-accountable. All right, let's have a look at this for a minute. The third thing that I want to talk about is how do we achieve a growth-minded organization? And you say, well, Rick, you haven't really spoke about growth too much. You've spoke about people today. The people in your organization are going to grow your organization more than a new process can, than a new plan would. So that's why we're focusing on the people today. It's most important right now to get the right people involved. So how do we grow during difficult times? Well, if we've got the right people, they've got the right attitude, the right values, and the right skill set. Now, strong leadership. This is where you come in. Teaching, coaching, and mentoring is so important. It's a really hands-on type of job that we need to be engaged with these staff members. And then you'll see, finally, I put up here grit. You say, well, what does grit mean, right? Well, we know that a book was written on grit. And it's a brilliant book. If you haven't read it, you need to. And it talks about two main areas when we have grit. It's passion and persistence. And that comes through as a leader. Take the right people with your strong leadership, multiply it by the grit that you have to continue, and you're going to have a growth minded organization to grow in all different ways. And it's real important for us as leaders to realize that, okay? You're a strong leader. And going forward, these are just some of the elements that we need to implement so that we can grow our organizations through people, not just process and products and services, but focus on people going forward. Now, I want to share the wrap up to that story that I started with earlier. Left an organization back in 2008 to go to a smaller one, and recessionary times hit. What did we do? How did it come out in the end? Well, here's what we did with the leadership staff. First thing that we did was that we flattened the organization so that everybody contributed in a similar manner to the growth of the organization and had impact on it, because believe me, they felt the urgency of that with the recessionary times and so many people getting laid off and no work. Sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? And as much as we haven't been through a pandemic before, we've all been through challenges. So we have to remember what those times were and what we did. In this particular instance, the team rallied around and created a new revenue stream and solution thinking about our clients. We put our clients first and said, how can we as an organization help our clients survive and even thrive through this recessionary time? Created that new revenue stream, providing services to our existing clients. Keep our clients in mind with the staff, creating a singular purpose. And that draws everybody together collectively to work collaboratively. And that organization not only at the time survived through the recessionary times, it thrived and set itself up for future success when the economy and other factors turned around. So that's really important going forward. How you create those growth plans is going to be so very vitally important. Now, I know there, Chris, we've got a few questions coming in. I wanted to share a lot of information with you to start with about how we can grow our organization by focusing on people, by creating engaging experiences for them, and adapting and holding them accountable as well. So, Chris, how are we doing on the phones and on the line here? Have we got any questions coming in at the moment? And then what I'd like to do is introduce Dr. Steve Towe, because Steve is one of the best people I know in dealing with people and understanding them and how we can connect things together with purpose and people involved as well. Chris?
Yeah, I think I know what I'm doing back here. Now that I'm unmuted, isn't that the phrase of the last 2 years, Rick? Hey, you're on mute, right? I should wear
That's
a T-shirt that says that. But we have a full green room back here of a lot of leaders that are chomping at the bit to discuss a lot of the content, the great content that you've laid out. And so if you would like, we could start pulling those.
Yeah,
those
you know what?
Let's
put Steve on the spot for a minute. Dr. Steve Tobe, I'm happy to have on this call as well. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm great. What an absolute pleasure to be here. This has been just in the few minutes that we've been at it. I've already taken some notes of my own. I'm always impressed by. I'm always interested in what you have to say. And there are a few things that you brought up that raised other issues for me that I'd love to just touch on real quickly.
Please share, Steve.
Well, you started out, first of all, I appreciated the concept of the Stockdale paradox, which is this idea that the only way out is through. The only way to create for ourselves the ability to move beyond difficult times is to acknowledge they are difficult times, and then to start looking at common goals and individual development. And of course, as you said, adaptability. I really leaned in on the idea of purpose. There was a great story back in the day where somebody was taking a gentleman around to look at his construction team, and there was one person who was laying bricks and just really grumpy and really in a bad mood. And he says, "What are you doing?" The guy said, "I'm laying bricks." He says, "What do you make?" He goes, "I don't make anything. All I do is make buildings for other people." And he was really grumpy and everything. And then he comes up to another person. The person is whistling and singing and joyful and just as happy as could be and doing the exact same job. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a cathedral." He says, you've got to share the ultimate goal. You've got to share what is the ultimate vision. Are you telling your people what they are building? And that's such an important thing. Another thing that comes to me is this idea of heart. Have you as a leader checked in with yourself? I always say, fix the mood before you fix the mess. You may look around your company and see a big mess, but until you kind of check in with yourself and do the inner work and kind of find yourself in a place of inner peace, you have to realize your energy is contagious. And so
Yeah.
that's another piece of the puzzle I wanted to share.
Excellent.
And then, we are living in a pandemic, not just of a disease, but we also have the pandemic of anxiety. Got a lot of anxious people all around us. People are anxious because of the circumstances, and they're anxious despite the circumstances, just because anxiety has become a thing of its own, based on who knows what, the economy, or
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that,
yeah.
Dr. Steve? And by the way, Dr. Steve, it's doctor for psychiatrists. So, doctor, how can you help us out with that? Quick
Well,
suggestion?
I'll give you three quick things that we in business could start to implement right in our workplace that will help to dissipate the experience of anxiety. One of them is build a culture of mindfulness. Have a chief mindfulness officer and teach your people how to meditate.
Chief
Give them
Mindful Officer.
a chief mindfulness officer, and a lot of the more progressive companies are doing it because
Right.
it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a commitment to the idea that it's every bit as important to have those moments of inner solitude and quiet, and teach people how to be quiet and how to shut off the internal dialogue, because that's a skill set that we need to build. The
Excellent.
second thing is humor. Are we building a culture of humor? We start with ourselves. Do you have a sense of humor about yourself? The things you talked about, Rick, about flattening an organization, and having each person within that organization have a relatively equal contribution to the organization, that requires a suppression of the ego. If you're an egotist, if I've got to be in authority, then I take myself much more seriously, and therefore I don't have much of a sense of humor. And so if we can suppress the ego to the extent that we can see things through the lens of humor, that's going to have an impact all over the organization. And finally, awe. One of the most fascinating things we've seen lately are some of the recent studies in the area of awe. Berkeley has been the leader in this, and I've been on some calls with the lead team that has been doing the research. And it turns out that a simple act of taking a moment or two to just experience awe, go outside, look at a beautiful scene, even look at a beautiful scene on your computer screen
Yeah.
for just a few moments, will suppress the experience of anxiety by up to 30%. So
Those
are
are
a couple
brilliant.
quick things you can do.
Steve, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. It's interesting you mentioned about ego. Back in my early fight days in boxing, I learned fairly quickly what one of my teammates meant when he said that your ego is not your amigo. You need to leave it at the door very quickly. Otherwise, it's going to be rather punishing for you. So, Steve, great to have you here, and thanks for your insight on this.
Thanks,
Great.
Matt.
Chris, next I'd like to bring on Michael Chung. Michael's VP of Business Development at a company called TFI Canada. And I've had the opportunity to work with Michael as a leader within that organization for some time now. And he's doing some great things there as well. And I know, Michael, we were on the phone the other day, and you mentioned about some things that you're putting in place for the organization as you actually grow through this pandemic. And congratulations on that. What can you share with us today?
For sure, Rick. First off, I'd just like to thank you for having me join today. This is a great event put on by you, and really appreciate this time. Just to share a little bit, you talk about culture, adaptability, and accountability. And one thing we have done as a company is enlist or instill KPIs for each individual employee. We came from a business where people were doing their day-to-day tasks and doing their jobs, but how were we really measuring it and holding our people accountable? And what we came up with is, first and foremost, sharing our company vision with the entire company, communicating, whether it be through town halls and newsletters on a regular basis. And then from there is identifying a KPI for each individual employee and holding them accountable to that number, whether it be a first call resolution for our customer care or sales metrics for our sales team, and service performance for our technicians out in the field. And from there, we were able to hold our people accountable to their performance, but it was important for us not to lose sight of the culture. And we, holding everyone accountable to all these numbers or metrics. And, we didn't want to lose sight of our people. And so it was important to us, especially now in a pandemic where virtually everyone is still working from home, that we would come up with ways to keep our staff engaged, whether it be through online events, social hours, or company challenges, making sure that, we're doing our part as leaders to keep our teams engaged, all the while holding them accountable to a new set of metrics based on their performance.
Nice. So a very positive company culture as well. And yeah, we still need to measure things. In fact, we want to measure them so that we can be sure that we're, recognizing and rewarding people for their work going forward, that everything's not just in vain, and you can have some positivity, which I know, Michael, you always exude in huge amounts. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Good. Just good. Chris, how we make it out? Are there any further questions from the different sources we've got on the go there? Maybe some of our other guests want to pop on as well.
Yeah, we've got lots of folks. We've got Bob back here and John in the green room. Happy to pop them on, or if our previous guests, if you guys want to excuse yourself, we can leave you on the screen if you want to hang out. This is a forum, but we're happy to bring on folks as you want here, Rick.
Great. Well, let's bring John on for a moment. And thanks for being here, John. And it is a forum, and it is a collective discussion. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we continue this discussion, because the leaders of today are collaborative, and they're not competitive, and they work together, and they benefit from each other. I've had the pleasure of knowing John for years on end. John, just briefly tell us what you do with a great organization and anything you want to share today.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Rick. It's a great session. I'm the Vice President of Member Engagement Corporate Partnerships at Electro Federation Canada. We're the National Association for the Electrical Industry. So I'm involved in a lot of the HR network, helping our members. We've got 230 member organizations, and I help them with their HR areas. I just want to make one general comment before I want to share a few tools that we've put in place that are really helping our members. One, I think a leader has to have a servant attitude. And I think a leader that has a servant attitude, it opens up to them being more vulnerable and having an openness for conversation. So I think the old model years ago of a top-down culture isn't there anymore. It has to be a real servant attitude. Mm-hmm. So a number of tools that we've put in place that have really worked for our members is one is designations. So we actually have a relationship with Great Place to Work. It's a large organization, and where you survey your employees to find out, how they're doing and what they think about their job, the company, and it measures things like credibility, respect, fairness, pride, camaraderie. And we did that at our association with our own staff members, and we picked up a few nuggets that we put in place for strategy as a management team to help our employees get engaged. But once you get that little Great Place to Work designation and you put it on a job description, you get way more better candidates, and it really demonstrates you as a great organization. The second point I wanted to make was the importance of corporate social responsibility. Companies want to give back, and people that want to join companies want to see companies giving back. So I brought in a relationship with Habitat for Humanity nationally, and this allows our members to participate in Habitat home builds, give money, and when you send employees on a home build, it shows them giving back, but it also builds teamwork in that type of area. And the other part of corporate social responsibility we've initiated is we have a national scholarship program. And this allows us to reach into the universities and colleges across Canada, fund them, but also give them opportunities to learn about our great destination our industry is, and also offer co-op part-time positions. And the final one I want to mention that was a big hit with is we started about 4 years ago a Young Professionals Network. And these are for our employees that have staff under 40. And what they do is they have their own network in place where they do a lot of training. So they'll bring guest speakers in like a Rick Denley to talk, or they'll have our career presidents give a story. Or what they did in June is nationally, they got together and did a national food drive where they all supported local food banks. And that just brought a more cohesiveness within the companies, within our membership. But also that word gets out to young people and potential candidates to come in and attract into the industry. So with those tools in place, It's really helped us address talent challenges that all the companies are addressing. And the other thing that floats into that, which we're focusing on, is a lot in diversity and inclusion. And so I have a lot of other tools that we have, but those are some of the ones that I would share just off the top of my head.
John, they're fantastic, and thank you. I knew you'd have some great things to share. That's an association which is so growth-minded. They're looking at the youth and how leaders can mentor and coach them and bring them along. I've had the opportunity for years to be part of that group as well. It's brilliant. You're talking about collaboration. You're talking about working together. You're talking about giving back. It's all about purpose, isn't it? And beyond the 9-to-5 job. And it makes them feel more engaged as well. And let me assure you that the up and coming generation that will be making decisions, and we'll probably be working for them one day soon, they want that. They want more purpose involved with it. And the DEI that you spoke of as well, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is very important nowadays and has to be very upfront. It's what people and high performers are looking for when they go to an organization. John, just quickly, where can people find more information? What's a good website to go to?
Well, they can find it all on our website at electrofed.com because we have all of our partnerships up there, and all these programs and many more are outlined. Or feel free to reach out directly to me. I'm happy to chat with anyone, outside of this session.
www.electrofed.com. Wonderful. Yeah, great organization. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
It's fantastic. Thank you. And as well, the giving back piece. We can all do something as leaders as well, some sort of philanthropy, and it doesn't have to be millions of dollars. And I'm going to bring Bob on the screen in a moment here. Good friend of mine for years as well. Incredible speaker. Bob's going to tell us briefly what he does in the industry that he plays in. But Bob, I remember as well, and I want you to touch on it after you introduce yourself, the fact that you've even set up a bit of a scholarship fund yourself. Tell us more about that.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today. It's great to join with all of these great leaders. I'm the author of the Canadian bestseller, Rich is a State of Mind. My playground is financial services industry. And I approach this a little differently than perhaps some of the other folks who are joining us today as a solo entrepreneur. So I don't get to lead a team, or I don't get to drive morale and membership and an organization. I'm pretty much an organization of one. But at the same time, for those out there in the entrepreneurial side, it's as big a challenge to drive yourself as it is to drive an organization. And in all too many cases, we know people who are great at driving the organization, but struggle with their own personal motivation side. So that's a lot of what I deal with financial services companies and their clients, who are people like me and people like you, trying to figure out how to create the financial future for ourselves that we want, despite everything that's been going on around us. I loved your slide, Rick. Adapt plus improve equals culture change. And sometimes we overlook that as entrepreneurs because we have to change our own culture. And over the last 2 years, how many of us had ever been in a Zoom meeting or a StreamYard meeting or Microsoft Teams meeting 24 months ago? My guess? None. Because we didn't need to.
Or presented from one.
Absolutely. And this push to work from home, as a solo entrepreneur, that part didn't change for me at all. I've been working at home for 15 years.
Yeah.
So when friends of mine were struggling with how do you deal with working from home every day, the biggest challenge to me from working from home is being 20 feet away from the refrigerator at any given point in time, right? So you've got to build things into your day about exercise and structure and a schedule that here's how I do my things, because that's exactly how we did it in the office. We had a routine. Well, that routine has to come home.
Nice.
And when it does come home, I think that structure provides all of us as humans with the ability to handle what's going on around us. When everything is completely unstructured, we get a little lost, and that's a bad position to be in for a leader of an organization or for a solo entrepreneur.
Great. Yeah, those are great points. So what you're saying, Bob, is that we as leaders have to be sure that we instill that into our organizations and our people, whether they be remote, hybrid models, whatever it might be. We need to have that in ourselves and get it back to our staff as well.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
make sure that as you're doing it for your staff, you're also doing it for yourself.
Very good point. Thank you. You know what? And that's why this is so important to have all of these great leaders like yourselves that are on this call. We need to collaborate. We need to support each other as well. Hey, you can say it's lonely at the top, whatever you might want to be, but so many times we look to see where we can go and what we can do. And we go, oh, and then we look there in the mirror and there it is. That's all that we have, but it's not. And I'm going to share a bit more about what we've got coming up starting in February again with our Leaders Mastermind sessions. Bob, just quickly as well, you've got a scholarship. Tell us about that.
I do. I have a scholarship that I created at Wilfrid Laurier University, my alma mater. And trust me, it's not the type of scholarship that's going to change somebody's life with the value of the scholarship. But I wanted to give back to the university that did a lot to create the grounding that I have after my time there. But for me, Rick, one of the most interesting parts of having this scholarship is that I get to meet the recipient every year. I get to spend about a half hour with him, usually over coffee at the university. And I can tell you this, it's often the best half hour of conversation I have all year. Because I get to meet these incredible 18, 19, 20-year-old recipients and talk about their future. And the passion and the vision and the dedication and their sense of purpose towards what they want to create. Every time I walk away from that conversation on the drive home from the university, I say to myself, holy crap, Geniac, get your act together. Because you're going to get schooled by these 20-year-olds who have it together way more than I do at age 60.
Reminds us of our hockey days, Bob, doesn't it? Bob and I have had the opportunity to play hockey for decades together, and every year, the ones that join us get younger, better, and faster and push us. Bob, you're humble, which I appreciate, but you give back so much. Just in doing that, it's not the dollar value, it's the mentoring that we can give. And that's something that really creates a legacy that we leave behind that becomes so important for us. So thank you for your thoughts on that. That's really great.
Thanks,
now, I see some comments in Yvonne. Thank you. Do for yourself what you do for your staff members. Yeah, don't forget about yourself. Let's make sure that we look after ourselves as well, right? You can't drink from an empty glass. So make sure that we look after ourselves. Dr. Steve, you're always good to remind me of that. So I appreciate that going forward. So with that, Chris, come back on the screen for me for a minute there. Where are you at, buddy? There he is. Thank you.
I'm
Good.
here. Yes. Yeah. Let's get a wider looking. I'm in the middle of all of these leaders. I feel outclassed, but this has been fantastic, and I think a lot of people are sitting back and like myself and scrambling and writing all these notes from these great people, and like so much free. I mean, you guys made this point about now in this, we have all of this free stuff that 2 years ago was not available to us, and all of this giving. So thank you for all of that you guys have done and given on this leadership forum, because I've got a whole rocket book full of notes that I took this entire time, and this has been fantastic.
Chris, I got two more things I want to do. Can you pull up the slide of the books, please? I always like to share what I'm reading. And, reading's so important now so that we continue our education. Our ongoing learning is very important. So 2 books that you might want to consider for your leadership shelf, if you haven't read them already. Win from Within. Okay, James Escott here. It's a roadmap for achievable and fast-paced cultural change. So if you want a real guidebook on this, he does a great job on this. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and he previously looked after the MBA program there. So he's got great credibility. And then a different book, if you want to read it, with some absolutely incredible stories in it by Mark. It's incredible. He's blending tactics from his days with the Navy SEALs and how the SEALs did it. And as you know, there's no more elite group in the world than that. And then how do you lead elite individuals like that? That's a whole different skill set. So those are 2 great books there. So final thing I want to share today, Chris, if you can pull up the slide there, and we'll have a look on my website towards masterminds. I'll say by popular demand, because it really is. People were engaged in these in the past. We're bringing them back from Peak Performance Leadership on a monthly basis. You'll see the website there with further information. And you know what? If you found this session today informative and relevant, if you benefited from connecting with other leaders and professionals, if you choose collaboration over competition, then this is a place for you. We get together on a monthly basis. Peer networking, sharing of successes, sharing of challenges to help each other out, great ideas, websites, information, skills, tools, and knowledge is what I always stress. And that's what we share on a monthly basis. So go check this out on my website and see if it's for you. We're starting up again in February on a monthly basis. We'd love to have you be part of it. It's so important to continually grow and look after ourselves as leaders, as we've spoken about here today. So Chris, anybody else online there before we wrap up?
Yeah, we've got some folks that are backstage without their cameras on. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
if
that's
they're...
okay today. Yeah,
Okay.
no, we did
All
great
right.
with them joining us. I appreciated everybody being on board today. If you're live, thank you for being live on whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, I see our YouTube channels. And if you're watching this as a replay, thank you for coming and watching this too. And you can find out more information about leadership by coming over to www.rickdenley.com. I'm happy to share with you. There's a button there as well if you want to click on it and have a 20-minute conversation with me and just see if there's some sort of fit that we can talk more about. Thanks to all my guests that came on here today. Really appreciate that. Dr. Steve, we've got John, we've got Michael Chung and Bob as well being here. So let's get together in the future. Thank you for your time. And I want you to remember something. Leaders influence. Okay, we step up. We get in front of that bus and drive it in the direction it needs to go. We need to give, all right, when we don't have to. We need to care for others. We need to grow continuously ourselves. We need to live with authenticity and empowering others, managing the hardships that we're all going through, and serving with humility. Thanks for being here today, and I look forward to talking to you more as a leader, as a growth expert in growing your divisions, company, and people, and even yourself. Thanks, everyone.